Somebody today gave me some advice for how to relax, and I'm doing that, Sam, just so you know. I had a really hard time wrapping my brain around what I was going to talk about today. I started thinking about hospitality, because of course that's why we're here, and I was thinking about my partnership with Suzanne, and a story came to mind. It's actually about my husband, because a few years back he made the grave error of buying a piece of furniture for our home without me. Big mistake. He's actually this crazy art dealer, audiophile. You would think he would have good taste. But he bought this console, stereo console, circa 1975, wood, bad wood. Speakers on the front, you open the top, there's a turntable inside, ancient turntable. I was horrified. This was not the cool mid-century vibe, it was a really bad vibe. And I did whatever any reasonable, mature woman would do in my position, and I gave him the silent treatment. For a while. And actually, he eventually relented, and he said, okay, I will take this thing back to my gallery. You'll never have to look at it. Don't worry about it. And I gracefully said, oh, thank you, dear. And he turned to me and he said, it's funny, I actually heard something on the radio today that I think really applies here. You can be right, or you can be in a relationship. Exactly, yeah. I snickered, I was like a little annoyed by that whole comment, and then I laughed because it was actually really true. And of course, we use this phrase all the time now. Every disagreement, you can be right, you can be in a relationship. Just remember. And I actually have a lot to say on the topic of relationships because I am what I have termed myself a long-termer. I get into a relationship and I stay there by choice, but I stay there. I mean, my high school boyfriend, I was with him for 7 years. I wasn't in high school for 7 years, but we were together for 7 years. I've been married to my husband now it'll be 30 years this year. I know. I tell him every day it feels like yesterday, and he laughs. And even though we bought an ugly cabinet, I'm still with him. And I've been in my relationship and my partnership with my business partner, Chef Suzanne Gowen, for over 25. She and I opened our first restaurant, as Donnie was mentioning, in 1998. It was called Lucques. And we currently operate a group of restaurants in Los Angeles. We have a wholesale bakery, and we operate the food and wine operations of 2 theaters in Los Angeles, concert theaters. And, we're not the only long-term relationship, long-term partnership. Look at Kevin, look at Donnie. There are a lot of us out there who have been in long-term relationships. But you do hear all the time about these relationships that go sour. You read it in Eater, you hear the rumors. It looks so great on the outside, but what was happening behind the curtain was really, really ugly. And I have to say, I'm very lucky that Suzanne and I are not in that position because we're really, really seriously aligned. We always want the same things. We want it done in the same way. We finish each other's sentences, and I'm not trying to say like, oh, we're besties, but we actually have the same vision and the same idea behind everything. We're in agreement on everything, and some things that are so painfully obvious to us are not to others. And through all of these openings, and actually we've closed some restaurants too, we've maintained this partnership in a really strong way, and I have a lot of people ask me, how have you maintained this partnership for so long? How have you been together for so long? And I'm going to take a sip of water right now because there's not enough water in the world today for me. But among other things, the strange thing is that Suzanne and I were raised in a strangely similar manner. We're both from Los Angeles. We were born 6 months apart. Both same socioeconomic situation. Our mothers were both intense, successful workaholics. Her mother was the president of the American Psychiatric Association. My mother was the first woman in Beverly Hills to own her own real estate firm. We both had crazy, unpredictable fathers. Hers was an exacting, perfectionist, plastic surgeon, intense foodie. Mine was a songwriter, intense alcoholic. But the thing was, we both had to learn how to handle these people. And in doing so, we became the rule followers, the good girls. We were the studious ones. We were the ones that didn't dare break a rule, didn't dare sneak out at night. And we developed this uncontrollable need to please people. It became our nature. And obviously, not everybody, when looking for their business partner, is going to find somebody who was raised so similarly. But I do think in our industry, there are a lot of people who are very, very much like us. We can all blame our parents, of course, for this. But we had to learn to be the caretakers, the peacemakers, we were the tension lesseners, and now we find ourselves doing that professionally. And the upside of that is that we make really, really good business partners because we like to take care of others. We like to keep people happy. We like to keep each other happy. And basically, we bring hospitality into our partnership. And yes, obviously, we know, we talk about it all the time. Hospitality is what we do for a living. It's how we take care of the guests that we bring into our restaurants. It's how we take care of our employees, but also we need to take care of our partners. Even our husbands, our wives, our life partners. You need to bring that kind of love and hospitality that you showed perfect strangers to the person who's the closest to you. It affects how you work with your partner, how you respect your partner, and how you navigate the inevitable disagreements, like the unilateral purchase of an ugly stereo cabinet. But truly, I feel like hospitality forms the basis for that relationship, for the long-lasting relationship. And I think it's true for any kind of relationship. It can be a general partner, a general manager and a chef de cuisine. It could be your life partner, doubles tennis, you name it. You need to show hospitality and respect and that interpersonal consideration to that person who's so close to you. It's very easy to take them for granted, but really they're the most important person to you. So here are my 3 lessons in relationship hospitality to help you ensure that you can be part of a long-term relationship. Number 1, you have to have your roles. Partnering with Suzanne was one of the best things I've ever done in my life. I cannot imagine it going through all that we do on a daily basis alone, that I wouldn't have somebody to bang my head against the wall with. We support each other every day. Suzanne's husband is actually a chef, and he didn't have a business partner, and he would come home and complain to her constantly that he wished he had somebody to do that with because it's just too much. And part of what works is that Suzanne and I both have our respective places in the business. I always say that she's solid and I'm liquid. She does everything with food and the culinary side of the business, and I do everything with wine and cocktails and service. Yes, she's front of the house, I'm back of the house. I'm back of the house. She's back of the house, I'm in front of the house, of course. But we do cross over a little bit. So funny that I got that all fatouts. Anyway, but we really do fulfill different needs in our business, and I think that's really vital. Because I don't want to be competing with my business partner. I don't want to be stepping on her toes. We don't want to have the same talent and be in conflict because we can't agree on whose version of that dish we'll be using. We don't want to overlap so much. I really think it's a much more well-rounded situation when you can complement your business partner's talents, when you can fulfill those separate roles and lift the business even higher and your success even higher. And in fact, I was recently talking to a couple of women who were trying to start a business on their own. They were partnering, and they came to me because I had been in a long-term partnership, and they wanted to know how to move things forward because they were trying to get this thing going, and they just could not progress things. And as we dug into what was happening with them, we realized that the problem was that they were both trying to be the idea person. They both wanted to be the creative brain behind the business, but they didn't have anybody who was the doer. Couldn't execute, couldn't move things from idea to reality, couldn't deal with the logistics and just making things happen. You need to have a division of labor. You need a purpose. And I think that I see people joining together who have the same talent or bringing the same thing to the partnership, and I just don't think it makes any sense. Number 2. You have to respect your partner. And you have to have an appreciation for what the other one does. It's really, really easy to sit back and think that what you do is so much more important than what the other one does. Everybody, and we've all fallen into this, everybody works harder than the other person, right? I'm always working harder than everybody else in the building. But it really takes hospitality and generosity of spirit to dig in and truly understand what your partner has on his or her plate. You have to have an understanding for what they do and an appreciation for the multitude of responsibility that you both have on your shoulders. It also is having an appreciation for each other's time. And I'm talking about working just as hard as the other one, putting in the same number of hours, being present. You got to hold up your end of the bargain. You have to be equally as willing to do what it takes to move things forward and succeed and get to your common goal. It's very easy. I hear people complaining all the time that their partner just isn't there when they need them. You know, where are they? They're not showing up when it's the most important. You have to be there. You've got to be present for yourself. You've got to be present for your business. And you have to be present for your partner. It's a really huge commitment. We all know it. Ask all of our families. And it's funny, I was going to mention that, you know, we're women. We want to have it all. And we're always chasing that dream of balance. But I think men are too. It's not just men or just women who are going through this. Men too. We all want to have that dream of balance. I know Suzanne and I both feel guilty when we're not at work. We feel guilty when we're not at home. I spend my days either feeling like I'm a bad business person or a bad parent or a bad spouse. And it's funny because even 25 years later, Suzanne and I have to reassure each other that it's okay to take a night off. It's okay to go on that vacation that you planned. And it's funny, it's not that we need to prove ourselves anymore. We said that to each other. I said, I think she's paid her dues by now. But it's also part of that hospitality that you express to each other, that you allow each other the freedom to do what they need to do, but also that we both know that we're still there and we're still dedicated. And then number 3 is you got to find the best way to navigate disagreements. And I think this is really, really key because how you treat your partner in the bad times speaks volumes for how you treat them in the good times. And although Suzanne and I have a lot in common, I mean, look, our relationship isn't perfect, but we do have a lot in common. We also have our differences. And that comes particularly in the way that we express ourselves. Suzanne is the fiery one. I mean, let's face it, she's a chef. It's in her DNA. And I'm more of the absorber of energy. I'm the ruminator. Her energy is great for the kitchen, and my energy is great for the dining room. She speaks her mind, sometimes to a fault, and I'm the diplomat, sometimes to a fault. And I really envy her ability to just say what's on her mind. I really, really, really wish I could be more like that. But this dynamic that we have definitely helps get us through our disagreements. You can't both be fiery. I mean, we'll have a Real Housewives of New Jersey situation on our hands. You need to have a balance of the energies. You need to have equilibrium. Otherwise, it can get really ugly and really unproductive. And truly, this yin and yang allows us the ability to have our disagreements and not have it turn into something bigger than it has to be. I give her the room to let out how she's feeling, and she gives me the room to work issues out at my pace. And once we've actually gone through our respective processes, we're already meeting in the middle, and we have a resolution fairly soon in an unemotional way. And we give each other our room to express ourselves in the way that we need to, and that's the hospitality that we extend to each other. That we allow ourselves to be the people that we are and to speak the way we need to speak and to handle these issues the way we handle them. But we come together because we know that we both want the same result in the end. It's funny, in preparation for today, I was going to say someone, but it was Kevin. He asked me to tell him about the biggest fight Suzanne and I had ever had. And I truly couldn't think of one. I thought of a silly one that had nothing to do with work. And it's not to say that we've never had an argument, and not that we've never disagreed, but I literally couldn't think of any time that we've gotten into a big fight. But we do have some serious issues that come up. And actually, I have an example that really kind of ties all of these 3 elements together. And it's actually kind of an embarrassing story for me. And it's that we opened a new restaurant recently, and the front of the house, my front of the house, was not performing in the way that it should. Like, we just could not get it together. Service marks were not hit. It was incredibly frustrating. And it caused a lot of tension for me and Suzanne. She actually thought that I wasn't performing in the way that I needed our business to. And we had some very, very difficult conversations for sure. And of course, she was super intense, and I was very quietly assessing. And I was super on the defensive because it's mortifying and embarrassing, and I can't believe I'm telling all of you that this was happening because this is really dirty laundry. And you know, we don't do that, but for the sake of the welcome conference. There were literally moments when, in my defensiveness, I thought she was wrong. But I decided I needed to take a breath. I needed to extend that hospitality to my business partner who was having an issue with me. And as I ruminated, and I realized that I could come up with so many excuses for why this whole thing wasn't working. But what I really needed to do was to sit down, think, and act. I recognized that this was what was best for the business and best for the partnership, was to not be so defensive and to just move forward and make a change. And she understood that I had a huge task ahead of me, because I'm sure you can understand having to start all over again, but I did, going back to basics with the staff, retraining everybody, spending the time and the hours that needed to happen to be there to affect a change in what was happening on the floor. And now, thankfully, as I get calls and emails about how amazing people's service was and how lovely the staff was and had the great hospitality that they had, and I read great reviews on Open Table, I think to myself, oh, and I see my partnership flourishing as a result too, I think to myself, you could be right, or you could be in a relationship. And one more thing, if you're wondering whatever happened to that stereo cabinet, it's still at my husband's gallery. I hate to admit it that it actually looks pretty cool, and I'm probably going to bring it back home. Thank you.